Hello and welcome back guys to a new episode of Kerbal Space Program, and in today's episode we're going to have a look at how I have built the SSTO that went in the Sister Planet series to Eve and back, obviously not to the surface of Eve. But yeah, so today's video is a very long, well, a rather long video, however not in terms of length, actual length in YouTube, but rather in footage, because the footage that is now compressed in this, what is that now, 15-ish minutes, well, it's actually about 3 hours worth of footage. So the first part, the speed build, as you can see here in the background as well, is actually at 12 times regular speed, so 12 times regular speed, so yeah. And I'm not going to go into too much detail onto and the footage, but rather I'm going to talk about the general process, how I have built this specific SSTO. And yeah, so you can see here in the very beginning we started out with Mark III fuselage with some Mark III passenger cabins, since the general idea of the Sister Planet SSTO video type of thing. So if you haven't actually checked out and seen the Sister Planet series, go and have a look at it. I'm really proud and I've put a lot of effort into it, so I really hope you enjoy it, and I would be happy if you go and have a look at it. So yeah, I will actually post a link somewhere here in the top right corner, so you will probably have a direct link there as well. So the idea of this space plane SSTO was to get the crew that went to the surface of Eve back to Kerbin, and what's a more stylish way to do that than with a nice SSTO. So first I just generally built an SSTO that with a new design, well, new style, not the Mark III space shuttle plane wings that I usually use really a lot of, but rather with regular wings and the very wide span area of the wings. That's what I went with, and then I was trying more or less to figure things out as I go. So yeah, and actually in the video you see the complete development process. So now we are at this point finished with the general design layout, and we take it out for a test flight, and there will be many more test flights to come, so definitely you see really pretty much all the entire building process. But now in the very first test flight we were flipping around, and the question is why were we flipping around, and I figured out it is the vertical stabilizers. We have not enough kind of stabilization in the, let's think about it, it's the y-axis, so the, well yeah, the yaw axis. So I went, instead of those two, I smacked the third vertical stabilizer into the center, but as you'll see in a second, this was not enough. Will not have enough stability still. Generally the idea of all these test flights is to figure out where the limits of the craft. So as you can see here, we had a flat spin because of the yaw axis going out of control, and then when we were dropping further down, it really took a long time to regain control, and that was also because the center of lift was a bit too far in the front compared to the center of mass. So that's why we were pushing the wings a bit around, so to more or less move the center of mass, since the wings are not that big in terms of, how's it called, in terms of mass. The fuel tanks along the side are a lot more, contributing a lot of more mass to the craft, so if you move them, we move a lot of the center of mass quite drastically forwards and backwards. The wings are very large, so moving them a tiny bit forward or backward is not going to make such a humongous difference. Of course it's going to make a difference, but yeah. So now the second test flight is a very good test flight in terms of we got a small satellite into orbit as well. We were in orbit, we ditched a small satellite, which is actually a docking adapter, frankly speaking. It's a probe core, but the idea of that is to dock to the ascent craft from Eve and bring it back to, well, to be able to dock with the space, with the SSTO itself. But like I said, go and have a look at Eve, at the Sister Planet series. There you have a lot more interesting, well, you see how things go out there. So now after re-entry, well, after slowing down, going down for re-entry, and I realized that we have a lot of drag and a lot of authority, so that's why we blew up the first time. I had a quick save, so trying to do the landing approach again, because, well, this is one of the hardest points in my opinion. That's making an SSTO empty and then trying to land that thing while having it stable. So the first thing, we were pitching too much downwards, and then the thing exploded because of the aerodynamic stress. The second time we just tried to do the opposite thing and we lost control because, well, the entire fuel was drained, and because of the very heavy engines at the back, well, the center of lift was too far in the front. So moving everything around and adding some new, well, the engine pods underneath there, and then, well, we blew up on the runway, so small tweaks there to the landing gear and things like that. And then we're back to square one actually, because we were spinning out of control again in the yaw axis, and then moving around the wings a bit, playing, like, really it's just a bit playing around, trial and error, doing another configuration with the wings, so moving them a slight bit upwards and attaching the engine pods where at the beginning underneath the wings to the kind of to the edge of the wings, to A, reduce a bit the general wing surface area, B, to move the wings up in order to have the center of lift not that far underneath of the center of mass, to create a bit more inline, so that these two, that the aerodynamic forces are working not at a too big angle compared to the center of mass. And now we do more or less another test flight. We drain all the fuel during the first descent and go back down from an almost suborbital trajectory, and, well, again, more or less the same issue. So now a slightly more drastic change of design. We take the big ass with the space plane, space shuttle elevator, so no, not elevator, I mean rudder, so for very large authority and very heavy and strong control and aerodynamic stability. However, I have just removed, not quite removed, the other two small yaw control thingies, so not elevators, every single time rudders, but I left them there as a, well, frankly I really like the looks of them, so I wanted to have them as a aesthetics still being around there, and it was an okay-ish test flight. We're getting closer, kind of. That's the main result of that thing. We are not stalling the aircraft, and it is flyable. We were just one small spin there, but after we were flying in powered flight and draining more fuel, it again became a bit too unstable. Well, in terms of unstable, it is very easy to maneuver. However, if you overdo it, well, then you overdo it quite fast and things go south rather quickly. Adding some air brakes here and there, just more or less now for utility. Actually, I haven't paid attention what I've changed except from that. And, well, we can see that not really a lot. Doing another test here, smacking ourselves into orbit to, well, test the re-entry characteristics, since this is the main issue, main problem, main biggest concern of me. And really, frankly speaking, this is, I'm actually getting rather close. There will be just a couple more tweaks in just a second. And, well, the point of this video is more or less to show you guys that building an SSTO is a lot of trial and error. You have to build, well, I usually tend to do it the following way. Build my SSTO in terms of aesthetics, and then figure everything out with test flights. How do I have to move forward? Do I have to move backwards? Do I have to change the amount of engines? So that was actually at one point we needed more engines, and just small and tiny things like that. So actually now there will be a cut. This is the last change I'm doing in the video, because then I did one more short test flight, but there was a 2-hour break where I went away and forgot to restart the recording, so the rings have been moved just a tiny bit. So this is more or less the biggest change there, but generally speaking, apart from that, most of the changes or development process, well, actually pretty much everything you have seen in the first video, or in the first, no, 9 minutes of the video, or 10 minutes now. So there was just a small tweak at the end there, which was not shown. But generally the main restraint or problem or issue or thing to keep in mind with this craft, with this specific craft, is it is stable in the lower atmosphere, even empty. However, it is very prone to making a flip or two when you pitch up too hard. And speaking of pitching up too hard, you will actually see what I mean with that at the end of the video. But right now we are now to regular, not regular, 3 times regular speed or 4 times regular speed, I'm not sure what I went with. I think it's 3 times regular speed for the ascent profile. So we're doing the regular ascent from Kuban, nothing too special frankly speaking. I think I've covered SSTO ascents quite a lot, but let's just briefly touch up on this again. Flying until you have more or less 420-ish meters per second, so that the rapiers have the more or less the most thrust they can produce, then pitching up at a range between 10 and 15 degrees. That's literally it. Continue doing that until you accelerate until about 20 kilometers of altitude and 1,200 meters per second in surface speed. Then turn on the nuclear engines and switch the rapiers to closed cycle mode, pitch up to around 45 degrees and burn until your apoapsis is around 55, 57, 58 maybe kilometers, and then point prograde. So now the last thing we're going to do, since this SSTO is now more or less, well, it is in orbit, we're going to drain almost the entire supply of oxidizer, because, well, this is more than just capable of going into low Cuban orbit, but I wanted to, well, I'm going to use it exclusively now in space without, well, in orbit and transfer burns and things like that. So we don't really need high thrust to mass ratio, and getting rid of that excess heat excess mass and oxidizer increased the delta V capabilities just a tiny bit. So now fast forwarding, I actually couldn't find the aerobraking footage, so there is actually some aerobraking footage in the Sister Planet video, so if you're interested in Eve aerobraking footage, go and have a look at that one. But after making those videos, I have deleted them so that the, I don't know, 50, 60, 70, 80 gigabytes worth of footage were not going to clog my PC too much, so I couldn't find them for this video, since this is like 3 weeks later, or 2 weeks late, 2.5 weeks after the making of Sister Planet. Doing this video here. So we went to Eve, we had a refuel there, because we didn't have enough delta V to get out of low Eve orbit, and after that, well, it was pretty easy just going back to Cuban. However, well, we were then re-entering a couple of times around Cuban, slowing down, going for a final approach towards the KSC, but because I was too greedy getting to the KSC, well, the nose exploded. So I went with something really unrealistic, and I was just pitching up so that we stalled, and that's what I meant. If you pitch it up too hard, you are going to spin around a bit, but as you just saw there as well, just a couple of spins later we are back to prograde flight, and that's what I mean. It is very aerodynamically stable, even completely empty. It is now almost empty. I think we've got a couple of units of liquid fuel left, but still, it is empty enough to feel that it is empty, and it still managed to put itself prograde without a lot of input from, well, even at high altitudes, and that really shows that this design works really well. On this note, we're just approaching the the runway for a nice soft touchdown here, and I hope you enjoyed this rather different type of video, and thanks very much for watching, and until next time, Spaceship signing out. Enjoy the rest of your day.